In 1993, Capcom brought two of cinema's most fearsome creatures into the world of side-scrolling beat-em-ups. But did this highly anticipated crossover game live up to the hype? Or was it a case of whoever wins, we lose? Because the game's bad. I'm Joe, a former games industry professional, and today we're heading to Vega 4 in this review of Alien vs Predator for the Super Nintendo. AVP was originally released in 1993 for the Super Nintendo Entertainment System. It was the first AVP game ever made and came years before any movie. Before getting into the review, it's good to consider the broader context of 1993. It was a year of significant technological advancements and cultural shifts. In the gaming world, the SNES, Super Nintendo Entertainment System, was competing with the Sega Genesis, and the 16-bit console wars were at their peak. Arcade games were still hugely popular, but home consoles were turning up the ante, and we all know how that turned out. Alien vs Predator fit nicely here, offering a familiar arcade-style experience but for home console players. However, it didn't quite stand out in a year filled with more groundbreaking titles. I mean, this game came out a year after Streets of Rage 2, which is considered one of the greatest video games of all time in the same genre. No pressure. The game was developed by Jorudan, a Japanese company that is currently primarily known for a public transport route navigation website. What? The game was published by Activision for us here in the West. Their name was on nearly everything back then. As a side-scrolling beat-em-up, the game is pretty straightforward. You're the Predator, and you must battle waves of aliens while moving through a stage. There are pickups that add variety, but overall, pretty simple gameplay. I really don't want to have to say the sentence, but you play as a Predator in the game who's been searching for big game to hunt. You were going to hunt humans on Vega 4, but the aliens showed up, and that is a bigger hunt for the Predators. From the first level, this game felt right to me. The dark atmosphere, the sprite work, and the simple mechanics drew me in instantly. Moving on from the first impressions, in theory, the gameplay loop is, dare I say, nearly perfect? Its simplicity is a strength in that there's not much it can get wrong, because the main objective is to move sideways and smash whatever is in your path. The Predator feels really powerful, which makes the combat satisfying, and the variety of weapons on the ground only add to that enjoyment. Whether that's a wrist cannon or a good old-fashioned spear, you're really gonna feel like a beast. I hope I don't get quoted on this, but there was a novelty to playing as a Predator, and I quite enjoyed it. Specifically, at this point in time, previous Predator games saw you only play as a human. I enjoyed the variety of xenomorphs you had to fight too, and I loved the detail of some of the bosses being aliens that emerged from animals, so they took on their characteristics. The game was a bit repetitive and lacked depth, especially when you consider the depth of games like Golden Axe 2, which came out 2 years prior. That wasn't a big issue. However, there is a core gameplay issue with this game: cheese. As the Predator, you can absolutely destroy hordes of aliens by just blasting them with your shoulder blaster. There's barely any cooldown, no punishment for exploiting this, and even if you want to be better than that, the fact that it's possible cheapens the gameplay a little. You're not the only one cheesing in this game. I think it was a strategy back in the day introduced by arcade games to get you to part with your coins. But beat-em-ups used to be fairly straightforward until you got to the final boss, who would absolutely wreck you, even if you've got like 10 lives. I will be honest and say I struggled at the final boss, but look at this. I mean, come on. In space, no one can hear me rage. But here on Earth, I'm sure my neighbours did. The gameplay was more forgiving than I remember Golden Axe being. I played a lot of Golden Axe and Streets of Rage as a kid, and those games whooped my ass. Overall, the gameplay was fun, and the issues didn't put me off. In fact, I enjoyed the challenge. Away from the gameplay and onto the visuals, wow, there's something beautiful about games that came before the rise of 3D. The graphics in this game still hold up over over 30 years later, and to me it's down to the awesome sprite work and the artists capturing the dark, gritty atmosphere perfectly with the backgrounds. Even with the 2D retro graphics, I was still disgusted by the chest bursters emerging from the bodies in the background. The boss designs were absolutely awesome. The fights themselves not the best, but look at some of this sprite work. I mean, wow. The audio backs this up with a great soundtrack that boosts the feeling of a dark, tense atmosphere. Moody, ominous tracks play for the most part, and then the boss battle songs raise the stakes. The sound effects are well executed and apparently true to source material, helping to bring the world to life. I will say, the audio doesn't push the boundaries of what's capable on the Super Nintendo, as Super Metroid showed with its absolute masterpiece of a soundtrack and creative use of sounds for effects. But you can't complain, as it's still immersive and pretty good. Fast forward 31 years later, all the way to 2024, and you have no AVP games in sight and none for the past 14 years. Alien is absolutely active still, with 3 games in the past 4 years. Predator less so, with Hunting Grounds being the last game released, and that was 4 years ago. Movie-wise, they're both still going strong, but it seems for games that licensing issues alongside the movies being poorly reviewed means that they're sticking to their own lanes for now. Does that mean we may never see an AVP game again? I highly doubt it, as games are doing crossovers for fun now, and the 2 franchises are still really strong. There's also still a lot of nostalgic value and a dedicated fan base, so there's hope there. To summarise, this game was fun. It was a visually appealing beat 'em up which felt good to play. For fans of the franchise, or either franchise, play it. It's a good game that does a decent job of representing the franchises. If you're not a fan of either franchise, it's still worth checking out if you're into retro gaming. I'd argue that Streets of Rage and Golden Axe are better overall games, but this game does have the iconic AVP franchise backing it with great designs. Since you guys made it all the way to the end, let me know in the comment section who'd win in a fight, aliens or predators. I never really watched any of the movies growing up, but I always leaned towards the predators, as I felt aliens were more like parasites that have strength in numbers, compared to the predators just being like an apex species that's a lot less gross. If you liked the video, make sure to leave a like to let me know I'm doing the right thing. Subscribe if you want more content like this, and let me know your suggestions down below. Thanks for joining me on this journey through time. Have a great morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are, whenever you are, and be sure to check back in next Friday, where we'll be leaving the past behind in a modern review. See you then.